Joining us right now is Georgia Senator, Senate Budget Committee and Senate Banking Committee member David Perdue. And Senator, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Good morning, Maria.
You'll be traveling on Air Force One with the president tomorrow to Georgia to visit the CDC. Before we get to that visit and what you're expecting, are you expecting the Senate to pass this bill?
Oh, I think so, absolutely. I think what we're seeing, Maria, is when you have strong leadership from the White House, Congress can actually act when we enter in a situation of seriousness like this. But I give President Trump a lot of credit. I mean, he recognized early this could be serious, and he and Vice President Pence have mobilized and moved. We get updates here pretty much every day. I think we've gained a couple of months, actually, because of the early moves we made about quarantines and travel limitations and so forth. And we're educating the public now about how to stay healthy and how to defend ourselves against this virus.
Yeah, I know, but, you know, you're going to be with the president today going to the CDC. What's the story with the CDC? Because there's been some serious incompetence there. The CDC first sends out, you know, all these test kits to the 50 states, and then they call them back and say, wait, don't test anybody. The kits are defective. Do we have the kits in place now? And do you see issues in the CDC in terms of handling this?
Well, first of all, I'm extremely proud to have the CDC in Georgia. They have been a stalwart against all these potential pandemics over the last 50 years. So they do a fantastic job. I give President Pence a lot of credit on this, too. Vice President Pence has stepped up on this testing issue. We now have the capability of doing over 1.5 million tests right now. So I think they moved on that very quickly. The CDC has. The NIH now is getting this additional funding. And let's put that in perspective. That's almost 10% increase in the NIH research budget is what we're doing in this supplemental. So this 8.3 is a lot of money. And for somebody like me that's a fiscal hawk, it's a serious issue to put that much money at this. But I think what the White House is asking us to do is to put enough money aside so we don't have to be here every 2 or 3 months trying to appropriate money to solve this crisis.
Senator Steve Forbes here. In terms of measures being taken, is there discussions, at least behind the scenes, that we may have to do quarantines in certain parts of the country? I think the American people sort of expect that major inconveniences, to use a mild word, are in store for this. Does the CDC and the FDA have plans to impose quarantines if necessary, where we just don't move?
Well, we've already done some of that with the flights that came back early in this process.
No, but I mean here in the United States, certain parts of the country are just not allowed to leave for a while.
There are plans in place as this thing might escalate, but right now let's keep it in perspective. You know, in this flu season, Steve, as you know, we had 32 million normal flu cases and 18,000 deaths already. That's tragic. Here so far we only have 160 cases and 11 tragic deaths. So even with those numbers, the president, the vice president, and all the professionals here dealing with this is a bipartisan approach, by the way. Everybody is on notice that to make sure that we're ready for any result in this thing, including plans for quarantines or travel restrictions or whatever we have to do to contain this in the United States.
Senator, it's Dagan McDowell. Do you think that this virus outbreak in the United States is a reason to make sure that in annual budgets that the CDC and the National Institutes of Health are funded better than at least was projected in the president's budget from early this year? And I know that's just a blueprint and a plan, but there were cuts to the CDC, were there not?
Dagan, yes, but here's a bigger issue, and I appreciate you bringing that up. You've talked about that before, so have I. Go back to the disaster relief around the hurricanes in the southeast, the fires in California. What we need in our federal budget is a contingency plan, a contingency budget for these things. Most states have that. Most businesses have that. The federal government comes over here and we just go to borrow more money and spend it in these emergencies. We need to have a contingency plan to deal with these things. With regard to NIH, I absolutely think we need more funding there, but here's the issue. Cancer, diabetes, and Alzheimer's are the 3 most expensive diseases we have right now. We need to be focusing on those in a way that we haven't been in the past, and in a way that I think right now we can prepare for these unexpected emergencies like this by having a contingency plan.
Senator, let me ask you this before you go. Does the government have any plans to use the military to set up temporary clinics and hospitals should they be needed, given the fact that there could be a shortage of beds?
Well, we've had it historically. We've had the National Guard mobilized in issues similar to this. I think it's way too premature to talk about that right now. Let me just say this, that the professionals are advising the White House and the Congress about all the contingency operations that may be necessary. I think it's way too early to talk about that sort of thing, but I will say this to the American people. This is a serious issue around the world. We've got something like 95,000 cases, but over 90% of those cases are still isolated in China. Let's keep it in perspective. But we're preparing now for the worst to make sure that we protect the country.
All right, we will leave it there. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much. We look forward to the update after your meeting at the CDC. Thank you, sir.